Hey there, happy campers. Jason back again with another video, and this week we are beginning our 4-part series taking a look at the developmental stages and tendencies of the campers themselves. So for each part in this series, we're going to be taking a look at the physical, cognitive, and social characteristics that make each of these age groups unique, and then we're going to be taking all 3 of those and tying them together and talking about what that actually looks like and translates to at camp and how best to work with those groups. And we're starting things off with the itty bitties, the youngest members of our camp communities, usually the 4 to 6 year olds. So the first thing that you'll notice about 4 to 6 year olds from a physical standpoint is that they are extremely active. They have motors that can just go. They are at constant and full speed as much as they can possibly help it. They really have 2 speeds, go and stop. And speaking of which, you will see that that is a tendency in them as well. They are either going at full speed or they are stopping, and they frequently will go back and forth between those 2 things. Go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. Now, in terms of what that going actually looks like, it tends to be a lot of very big muscle movements. A lot of kicking, a lot of moving the arms, a lot of getting the entire body involved as much as possible. There's not very much fine motor movement, not a lot of finger manipulation, not a lot of little tiny delicate movements. It's a lot of big movements. And then one really interesting thing to know about these guys physically is that they tend to really be working on their left to right tracking when it comes to far away objects. Up and down they're fine, but if things go across their field of vision from left to right, before it finishes crossing their field of vision, they tend to get bored with it and give up on it and really struggle to track and follow things. So if you're going to work with them, you want to keep things right in front of them, right where they can see them. Now, moving over to the cognitive side of things, 4 to 6 year olds tend to have extremely active imaginations, and they are very, very vivid ones. They love to pretend play, they love to act things out, they love to make believe. They're also really, really big into routine, and you will find that they crave the structure and predictability that comes with a regular set routine and schedule. They do very well if they can know exactly what to expect and that they know what's going to happen. Similar to this, they're also really, really big on copying and repeating. I'll say it again, they're really big on copying and repeating. They're really big on what? That's right, copying and repeating. And so to go with that modeling, the act of actually showing them what you want them to do and showing them the expected behaviors and actions goes a really, really long way with this age group. Show them what it is you want them to do. Tell them what it is you want them to do. Have them tell it back to you again. Have them show you. Who can show me what it looks like to be a good listener? They will be putty in your hands. Now, in terms of social development, a lot of these kids are actually just kind of starting to figure the whole social thing out. Prior to this, before the age of 4, a lot of kids are kind of in their own little world. I mean, they know that other people are there, but the ability to take other people's perspective and, realize that other people have needs and wants that might be different than theirs, a lot of kids aren't there yet, even when they reach 4 or 5 years old, and they spend a lot of the beginning time at school and in camp really developing these kinds of emotions and feelings and honestly just empathy. But similar to how earlier I said that these kids are going to crave structure and routine, well, these kids, when it comes to social orders, are really, really big on the rules. What is the rule? And then because of this obsession with the rules and what you're supposed to do, if someone's not doing it correctly, a child can become very bossy and overcritical of their peers. But you can absolutely use this desire for rules and structure to your advantage. This is an age where giving a kid a job or having a special helper goes a really, really long way, and they love it. They want to feel special, and they want to know that the job is theirs and that they're doing a good job because that's what the adult wanted them to do. So then overall, what does successfully working with this age group look like at camp? Well, because they have so much energy and they're go, stop, you're going to want to plan a lot of varied activities with differing levels of physical exertion, and you're going to want to follow your high energy activities with some more low-key ones. Don't be afraid to take frequent breaks, not only because they're going to have to go to the bathroom more often because they're little kids with little bladders, but also because they're going to tire out more easily, and honestly, they might just get bored more quickly with your activities. Their attention spans are not very long. But probably most importantly, embrace that desire for pretend play and imagination, and feel free to use that in your group. Be silly, be imaginative. Instead of going on a hike, you're going to explore a castle and rescue the princess from the dragon, that kind of type of stuff. Make things grand and big and adventurous and fantastical, kind of how camp already is in their minds, and they'll do great. So that's going to do it for our little kids, our itty bitties, our 4 to 6 year olds, the tiny campers. All right, my friends, if you're watching this at orientation, there's a good chance that your director has the next one queued up. So I'm going to see you right on the other side of this transition. And if you're still here, that means that you're watching this on YouTube all by itself. You know the outro by now. All right, campers, lights out. Hey there, happy campers, and we're back, this time with part 2, talking about the 7 to 10-year-old campers at camp and what they're like physically, cognitively, and socially. So this age group is my personal favorite to work with. I think these guys are great, and here's some of the reasons why. From a physical standpoint, campers at this age are really starting to get a pretty good handle on their fine motor skills, their little muscle movements. So whereas their younger counterparts were really into getting their entire body involved in their movements, 7 to 10-year-olds tend to want to stay in one place and move around very small movements, usually with their hands and usually manipulating very small objects with them. And similar how they like to keep their movements small and tight and in close to their body, they're also going to seek out, as sort of a comforting thing, smaller and more confined spaces. So this is an age where they're really going to seek out those small and confined spaces. Forts, secret hideouts, tents, even just reading a book underneath the covers of their bed. That's going to be really soothing for them and really a sense of comfort. Makes them feel safe, makes them feel secure. And then when they do make those big, large, grand, gross motor movements with their entire body or large limbs, especially in girls, these can tend to be kind of clumsy because growth spurts are starting to get in there. Because remember, girls do hit and start puberty earlier than boys. Shifting now to their cognitive development, this is where this age group really separates themselves from all of the other ones. These guys are really fascinated with the world as a whole. You see, prior to this developmental stage, kids are kind of really in their own little world like we talked about. They're kind of self-focused. How does everything affect them? Everybody else is kind of the players in the soap opera that is their lives. But somewhere around the ages of 8, 9, and 10, and it's different for every kid, they sort of just become aware that there's this big, huge world around them with lots of different moving parts. And so the big thing that they love to figure out at this age is, how do all of those big moving parts in the world interact with each other, and just how do they work? And at this age, their learning about the world around them and those interactions is best done tangibly. They like to learn through both discovery and exploration. They want to make these connections themselves, and they want to manipulate the things with their hands. They want to get their hands dirty and really dive into understanding it and forming those knowledges themselves. Which also explains why at this age, they are really into categorizing, organizing, and collecting things. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows in terms of cognitive development at this age, and it's not uncommon that in the quest to find order in the chaos that is the world, that a lot of perfectionist tendencies will try and creep in, especially in kids around the age of 9 or 10 on the upper end of this age spectrum. Kind of similar to how in the last age group we talked about how there need to be rules and that they're really big on the rules. Well, now instead of rules, it's order and structure, and everything must go in its place and everything must be how it's supposed to be. That's how this will tend to manifest itself. Shifting now to their social development, given their desire to make all of these connections themselves and to seek out confined space, well, it shouldn't really be much of a surprise that a child in this age group really prefers to work by themselves or in extremely small groups with maybe one other person. However, if they do want to work with one other person, it typically tends to be with a best friend. And they're really big on having best friends at this age. However, who that best friend is will tend to be pretty flexible and will change from day to day or from week to week. However, they do tend to be extremely loyal to the adults that are in their lives and important to them, which at camp tends to be you, their camp counselor. It's not uncommon to hear campers at this age arguing or boasting to their fellow campers about how their counselor is the best, or just straight up how they're better than the other kid's counselor. So how do you successfully work with these campers at camp and make sure that they have an amazing time? Well, rule number one, let them get their hands dirty. They learn best by doing and by making connections themselves. Put them in situations where they are going to do the learning themselves and have that knowledge gaining happen organically, but you want to get them in there. This is not the age to sit them down and lecture them about how a concept works. Show it to them, have them use it with their hands, have them be doing as much as possible. That's how the knowledge is going to stick into their brains. Tying back into what I said earlier about their obsession with order and needing to know how things work, there are going to probably be campers in your group at this age who are obsessed with the schedule and needing to know what is coming up and what is going to happen next. So as their counselor, you're going to have to learn to strike this balance between teaching them how to live in the moment and also satisfying that need and figuring out how much of the schedule to let them know about what's coming up. But if I had to describe this age group in 3 words, it would be thoughtful intensity and adventure. They are super cerebral at this age, but they want to know everything and they want to soak it in like a sponge. Use that to your advantage. Don't be afraid to use the big vocabulary words on these kids. They want to repeat them back and they want to be able to demonstrate that they understand what's going on. They take a lot of pride in knowing what the answer is and being able to say that they understand what's happening. But like I said earlier, these are absolutely my personal favorite campers to work with. I love 7 to 10-year-olds, so give them a try. They might just be one of your favorites as well. All right, friends, that's going to do it for this part in the series. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you back again for part 2, where we're talking about 11 to 13-year-olds. All right, campers, lights out. Hey there, happy campers. Jason back again with part 3 of our Ages and Stages talk on child development at camp. This time we're talking about the preteens, the 11 to 13-year-olds, the angsties, the I haven't quite hit puberty yet, the oh my god, everything is so awkward all the time, everyone's favorite age growing up. So just like last time, we're going to be taking a look at the physical, social, and cognitive markers of this age group, and then just kind of going over what that looks like actually at camp in order to make your work with these guys successful. So starting with the physical development of this age group, these campers, they make up a wide range and variety when it comes to sexual maturity and growth. And even though girls will traditionally hit puberty earlier than their male counterparts, you'll even find this wide variety within the sexes themselves. You'll find that some's voices are starting to crack and deepen a little bit, while others still sound like their younger counterparts. And then between the sexes, there's an even larger disparity between the two of them because girls, like I said, do traditionally begin puberty a couple of years developmentally before boys will. It's actually kind of fun. Line a whole bunch of 12-year-olds up by height and it'll be all of the boys and then all of the girls. And then because of this rapid change that their body is physically undergoing, these campers tend to be extremely self-conscious about those changes to their body, and it's really awkward for them. And then not to mention the fact that they can kind of just be clumsy, especially with all of these changes that their body is going through and them not being used to taking up as much space as they used to. And oh my god, all of a sudden my arms and my legs are way longer than they used to be and really disproportionate compared to the rest of my body. It's totally natural and totally fine, but remember, the kids are going to be super self-conscious about it. So you might get this super athletic kid from last summer that this summer is like, nah man, I want to sit out. I don't want to embarrass myself. But it's not all necessarily bad and awkward when we're talking about this age group, because if we shift into their cognitive markers, this is where this age group really starts to shine. First things first, you're going to notice that they're way more capable of thinking abstractly and hypothetically, whereas their younger counterparts are very literal and need things explained to them exactly how they are. These campers are more able to deal with concepts like fairness and equity and, the harder concepts to wrap one's brain around. They can start to understand them and process them and learn about them. And then whereas in the last video I talked about those campers are transitioning into being more grounded in the real world, these campers are extremely grounded in reality. It needs to be tangible, it needs to be in front of them. They have completely abandoned the fantasy and pretend play that were markers when they were younger. But then as their thinking shifts from fantasy into a more grounded and reality-based thinking system, they're able to use that extra brain power that they now have to be able to solve and consider multi-variable problems. They can consider multiple things when trying to come up with a solution all at the same time. So they can take on some pretty complex problems, and they love to show off and use this newfound ability as well as those harder concepts that I talked about to really work on problem solving and coming up with simple solutions to seemingly complicated problems. Now, piggybacking on those more complex issues that they're ready to take on, whereas when they were younger, they focused more on the idea of fairness and the rules, now their concepts are going to shift a little bit more, and it's going to be more around the ideas of justice and equity. And so you'll see this shift within their group thinking and problem solving away from what's correct to moving to what's right, what is just, what is fair, but not in the same fairness of like playing by the rules and making sure that everybody has the same standards to be held by, and more of what is fair for this individual and for the group as a whole, and that can be flexible. Now, speaking of their peer groups are going to begin to expand and take on an increased importance at this point in their life. And you had better believe that the acceptance and approval of their peer group will very frequently trump that of the adults that are in their life. They much more care about what their friends think than what you think. So they will go out of their way to make sure that they are not being put in situations where they're going to accidentally embarrass themselves in front of their friends. And then finally, for these campers, it's very important for them to feel like they're part of something that's important, or at least seemingly important to them and their peer group. So overall, I would say that this age group is a pretty dramatic shift from the one that came before it, and that can be pretty difficult for a lot of counselors to kind of get their heads around, because very frequently the mind will start to mature at a different rate than these ones will physically. So even though they're going to look like their younger counterparts, they're still going to have some of those markers where the peer groups are super important and they don't want to get embarrassed in front of their friends, some of those things. And so you might see them and think, oh, you're just like your younger selves, where you want to, get into these things and learn about how the world works and some of the things that we talked about in the last video. And then you go to do that with them and they want nothing to do with it. So how do we successfully work with this age group at camp and make it so that your life is as easy as possible and they have an awesome summer? Well, first things first, know that it's probably going to take you a while to earn the respect and trust of campers in this age group. To call these campers slow to warm towards adults and their counselors is very frequently an understatement. Just keep at it. You be a constant that's there and that they know that you're there for them and you have their best interests at heart, and just don't put them in situations where they have to choose between doing what their friends want and expect of them and having to please you, because more often than not, when you're starting out, you're gonna lose to the friends. One really great way though to earn that respect and that trust is to take advantage of their desire to be part of something that's important. They really get into legacy and tradition. That makes them feel like they're part of something really big, and that they're contributing to it in a positive and lasting way. They really eat that stuff up. So service projects, if there's any large events that affect the entire camp, putting them in a leadership position for that type of stuff, they will absolutely love that. And then finally, unlike before where we were playing up the fantasy and just the overall just novelty of camp, these guys are really going to seek out to have a more adult experience. So they want to just experience the activities for what they are. They want to play basketball to play basketball. They want to do ropes to do ropes. So just treat the activities that they are what they are. Don't need to reinvent the wheel. Don't need to try and do stuff to get them excited about it. Just the activities are what they are, and they're fun, and we're doing them because they're fun. Okay there, friends, that's it for part number 3, the 11 to 13-year-olds. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time for part 4. All right, campers, lights out. Hey there, happy campers. Jason back again with another video. Time now for part 4 of our 4-part series on developmental ages and stages. We're talking about the teenagers this time, your oldest campers in camp. So diving straight into the physical characteristics of our 14-year-olds, by and large, their bodies have slowed down developing. I mean, they're still growing, they're still getting taller and all of that, but it's not a new concept to them, so they kind of have a better sense of where their body sits in space and in motion, and they kind of enjoy the novelty of their bodies and feeling it move in space. And by that I mean that they tend to want to seek out things that are going to give them an adrenaline rush, whether it be the more extreme activities in camp or things that give them a lack of feeling of control, like having somebody else drive really, really fast. This is also when they're going to really be into like roller coasters if you go on to trips into amusement parks as part of camp. But they are going to, like I said, seek out those adrenaline rushes, seek out those thrilling experiences, sometimes to their own detriment. They do tend to be fairly safe with it. They tend to know their body's limits fairly well, but every once in a while they are going to push those boundaries and can get themselves in a little bit of hot water with, oh, I've gone too far. Getting back to the point, though, of them knowing their bodies pretty well at this point, they do tend to know their body's physical limits and what they are and are not capable of, or at least they think they do. So the way that this manifests itself at camp is they might not want to take on challenges that they know that they physically can't do, or at least that they think that they can't do. This can also sometimes make them hesitant to try out new experiences. Do you want to go hiking up the mountain? No. Why not? And in their head they're going, I have never hiked up a mountain before. I don't think that I can hike up a mountain, therefore I do not want to hike up a mountain. And so as their counselor, you're going to have to work with them a little bit in these situations to show them that yes, you are capable of this. I believe in you. You've done these things before that translate well to this, and to slowly but surely build that confidence in them so that they can get and do the things that you want them to do. And then my last thing on their physical attributes, and this is just a general rule, but it tends to be true at this age, is that in terms of appetites, boys at this age tend to have enormous appetites. They eat anything that you put down in front of them. They're constantly going for seconds, thirds, and fourths at mealtime, whereas girls, on the other hand, at this age tend to become pickier eaters. So one thing that you're going to want to watch for if you're a counselor for girls that are this age is making sure they're actually getting enough nutrition. Now, whether or not that comes down to a body image thing or a calories in, just not being hungry thing, that's something to discuss more with your camp director, but just be aware of it. Shifting now to the cognitive markers of this age group, they have a very, very well-established sense of themselves and who they are, and they want to be valued and they want to feel like their opinions are being heard. And dear God, do they have strong opinions, and it's very, very important at this age to validate those and tell them that you do hear them. You can challenge them a little bit and see if they've completely thought their ideas through, but you do want to make them feel like they've at least been heard and that they've at least got a seat at the table when it comes to making decisions. And one of the biggest reasons that they want their point of view heard is because it's an easy opportunity for them to demonstrate the skills that they have and the knowledge that they have, which is something that this age group is really big into. They not only want you to know that they know what they're talking about, they want to show you that they know what they're talking about. They want to show you that they can do this. They want to be able to show off what they're both physically and mentally capable of. And now, as a camp counselor for this age group, you're in a pretty unique position because these are the campers that are closest to you in age. They're still going to see you as an authority figure, but whereas the younger ages saw you as this ivory tower, your word is definite, these campers are going to see you more closer to like a peer. Peer's kind of the wrong word, but they're going to see you more as somebody who's closer to them and can be more of like a big brother kind of type of role. But that being said, expect them to take a pretty heavy interest in your personal life. Campers this age tend to have a pretty idealistic view of adult life. They can't wait until they're, all grown up because all of these great things that they get to do. And so therefore, by being an adult, you therefore must have all of these great things about being an adult so lined up for you. They want want to learn more about it, kind of like a younger kid learning about this awesome fantasy world that they'll someday get to go to. That's teenagers and adulthood. They want to know more about it. Make sure, though, that you're having those discussions with your director ahead of time about what you should and should not be sharing with your campers, because they're going to want to know all of it. Or shameless plug, check out the video in the top right corner, and we talk about what you should and should not be sharing with campers. And then lastly, from a cognitive standpoint, these campers really lack patience when it comes to meaningless activities. They want everything to be purposeful. They want to know why they're doing it. They really don't do well with activities that are just killing time or just because. Everything needs to have a purpose and a reason. Shifting over now to the social side of things, and as you probably guessed with teenagers, the social needs are gigantic with this camper group. They really care what their peers think. And how I said earlier that they kind of idealize adult life and they sort of put it on a little bit of a pedestal, well, they also tend to romanticize sexual and intimate relationships. This is the age of the grand gestures, the stereotype from the teen movie of the boombox up above the head. So they really have a romanticized view of both relationships and sex. It's this amazing thing. There's usually a big point about losing virginity that starts around this age, really hits a head around 16 years old. So just be aware of that and watch out for that. Shifting away from that now and back towards more campy kind of things, these campers really want to set their own goals. Remember, they're very autonomous. They want to demonstrate their knowledge and they want to show you what they know. They really want to set their own goals and objectives because remember, they think that they know best what they're capable of and what they can do. So let them set their goals. Give them the parameters, but you have them tell you what they're capable of and go, okay, great. Let's do it. And then if at all possible, these campers really want to seek out adult leadership roles. And you'll see this manifest itself a lot in like CIT programs. That's, the counselor. That's counselor training. Counselor is an adult role. So whereas with younger campers, you could give them a job as like a helper, you just stand next to me and help me do these things and that type of stuff. And you're basically just keeping the kid busy. No, these campers, if you're going to give them a leadership role, they want it to be an adult leadership role. You're responsible for X, Y, and Z. I'm going to come to you to make sure it's done. And if it's not done, we're going to have a talk about it. That's the type of stuff that they're craving here. So now let's talk about how to translate all of that into working with these campers and having a successful summer. First thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to help them develop and apply their leadership skills. So put them in positions where others are going to rely on them and where they have jobs that affect the entire camp community and they can really work together to come up with a common goal that they've set themselves and that they can see through. They'll really thrive on that. You're also not going to want to be afraid to discuss bigger issues and topics. They're very aware of what's going on in the outside world and they're going to want to know what you, an adult that's an important role model in their life, what your opinion on those things are, helping them figure out what they should think. So again, have the discussion with your camp director about what you should and shouldn't discuss with them, but be aware that these topics are going to come up and what little you can share or, how deep you want to dive into it on both sides of an issue. If you're able to go into there, depending again on what the issue is and what the policy is at your camp, they'll really do well with that. They want to have these discussions, the adult conversations, so to speak, about these bigger issues to help them understand them. And then finally with these campers, while they do really put a heavy emphasis on social structure and fitting in with the group, you as the counselor are going to want to try and find opportunities to celebrate and to show off their individual uniqueness and differences, the skill sets that make them a valuable member of the group and sets them apart from other people, but that they should be valued for those differences. This is an age where, I'm different might not be the most, comfortable thing for these campers. So really finding a way to celebrate those differences, letting those strengths shine is really going to go a long way towards building these campers' self-confidence and serving them better later in life. Okay, friends, we've made it to the end. That was all 4 parts of our developmental ages and stages at camp. Thank you so much for watching. If this was part of your staff training, congratulations. You've made it through. Check it off. One part of orientation done. If you're watching this on your own, then Kudos, thank you very much. If you haven't already, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel for tons of more content geared towards making you a better counselor. I'm going to take the rest of the summer off for right now because I got my own camps I got to go run, but I will see you all in September. You've got this. If you have any questions at all, you can feel free to reach out to us, follow us on Instagram, or leave a comment on this video. But until next time, campers, lights out.